What's up, folks? How's it going? This is Watch. Hope you guys are all doing well. And today we're going to be talking about my favorite topic of all time, and that is handheld gaming consoles. Now, we've been covering the Nintendo Switch OLED for the past couple of weeks, been really enjoying it. We did a direct head-to-head comparison against the base model Switch and found that it was definitely worth the upgrade thanks to that gorgeous 7-inch OLED display. Now, a few months back, I supported an Indiegogo campaign that promised to bring one of the best handheld gaming experience ever to the market with a product called the One X Player. And initially I thought that those claims were quite bold, but after several months of usage, I really think the One X brings the power and capabilities of the PC gaming experience to a mobile form factor that's well integrated and well designed. And much like the Switch, you can use the One X in a couple of different modes, including full handheld mode, thanks to its integrated gamepad controls. You can hook it up to a TV and use the onboard controls or even any third-party wireless gamepad from Sony or Microsoft and use it in kind of a living room style gaming PC. You can even hook it up to a PC style monitor and use a mouse and keyboard to play certain games. And there's even a magnetically attaching keyboard that integrates to the bottom portion of the One X Player, effectively creating a laptop style mode, since this is basically a Windows-based machine optimized for mobile gaming. And due to that notion, that makes the One X Player extremely useful, adaptable, and expandable for future growth. One of the cool things about it is that you can use it as just a regular gaming PC or even just a PC in general, since it does have two USB Type-C 4.0 connections delivering 40 gigabits of data throughput, so you can hook it up to multiple 4K displays or even an eGPU system for even a better gaming and graphical performance. There's also a USB Type-A connection, so you can hook that up to a hub, connect multiple different accessories including keyboard, mice, headsets, apart from the fact that it does have an analog 3.5mm connection, as well as a SD card reader to expand the internal storage up to 2 terabytes. Now, in terms of directly comparing against the OLED Switch, which is tough to do because the Switch is a dedicated gaming console platform, whether it be in the handheld mode, tablet mode, or in the living room TV dock mode. And unlike the One X Player, this is not a laptop gaming PC or anything like that. Although it does have some multimedia functionality where you can watch YouTube videos, stream online content, and things like that, this is still a dedicated Nintendo-based gaming system specifically designed for that purpose. And that means we're going to kind of ignore all the extra features of the One X Player and specifically focus on how it compares against the OLED Switch as a handheld gaming system. How effective is the design? How portable is it? What's the battery life like? Is the game library as extensive? And how easy it is to overall use as a dedicated gaming system. Firstly, from a design and portability standpoint, you can see that they utilize similar designs like most modern gaming systems in a handheld form factor, where you have a large center mounted display and game controls on the side. Now, from a portability and dimensional standpoint, you can see that the One X Player is certainly significantly larger. It weighs almost double the amount of 820 grams versus 421 grams on the OLED Switch. And although both of these are definitely not pocket friendly, the cool thing about the Switch is that it has the detachable Joy-Con designs, and in tablet mode the OLED Switch is certainly a lot more portable and overall definitely more travel friendly than the One X Player, which is completely not pocketable and probably needs a dedicated case for traveling purposes. In terms of build quality and materials, the One X Player is primarily made out of polycarbonate and ABS plastics. It's fairly high quality in terms of overall fit and finish. It does utilize a non-slip rubberized surface, which is a fingerprint magnet, but it's definitely going to be quite grippy, but will definitely need some maintenance and cleaning from time to time. The OLED Switch, on the other hand, utilizes a matte finish, which is definitely better for general upkeep. It won't leave fingerprints all the time, and although the One X Player does have decent build quality, I wouldn't give it to gamers at a certain age, say below 8 or something like that, since it probably will be a little bit more fragile than the more durable and kid-friendly Switch. Both units actually utilize a rear-mounted kickstand. On the OLED Switch, it's super reinforced, takes up the entire space of the rear section of the tablet. Definitely a huge upgrade compared to the original Switch kickstand, which is very flimsy. The One X player also has a center-mounted kickstand, which is certainly durable than the original Switch kickstand, but not as robust as what we find on the OLED Switch. Now, in terms of the control interface, the One X utilizes an Xbox-style controller layout, so you have A, B, X, Y buttons, asymmetrically mounted thumbsticks that actually utilize Japanese original Alps 360-degree rocker switch with a built-in L3 and R3 functionality, analog left-right triggers, as well as a fast touch bumpers. On the upper portion of the controls, you'll also find an Xbox-style back and menu buttons. There's also some Windows-specific controls, including the Windows Start menu button located on the bottom left-hand side, this solid orange color, and on the bottom right-hand side, you'll find a turbo button, which increases the power management mode into high performance, as well as a button to pull up the on-screen keyboard. Lastly, at the back of the unit, you also find a power standby switch, which has an integrated fingerprint scanner. Now, functionally, the One X control interface is pretty much the same as what you would find with any good gamepad from Microsoft or Sony. It doesn't feel as high quality as a proper gamepad controls in terms of the overall clickiness of the buttons. They're not as tactile or as mechanical feeling as what I experienced with the Joy-Cons on the Switch OLED, which definitely have a more satisfying, clickier, and tactile feel. But the thumbsticks I do like better on the One X because they're larger, better surface area compared to the more smaller, more miniaturized thumbsticks controls that we find on the Joy-Cons. Furthermore, I was never really a big fan of the triggers and bumper layout on the Joy-Cons. Felt just a little bit too small for me, and definitely didn't have enough travel distance. Thankfully, since we have full-size linear triggers on the One X, they're definitely better for playing driving games and things like that, and definitely feel a little bit more full-size. You also have a little bit larger bumpers that feel fairly tactile and responsive, and definitely more comfortable to use long-term based on my experience with the One X compared to the more cramped setup we have on the Joy-Cons. Now, the cool thing about both consoles is that if you want to use them in a living room style environment or in tablet mode, you can connect third-party controllers. With the Switch, you can get the Switch Pro controller or utilize their Joy-Con controller attachment, which comes free with the OLED Switch, so you definitely get a better control interface that way. And with the One X, it's pretty much universally compatible with any gamepad control that works on PC-based systems, whether that's Bluetooth, wireless, wired, anything like that. So your options there are almost infinite. Now let's talk about the overall display configuration we have on both handhelds. On the One X, we have an 8.4-inch IPS LCD display versus a 7-inch OLED on the new Switch. Resolution is definitely a lot higher on the One X, 2560 by 1600, PPI count of 358 versus 720p display on the OLED with a PPI count of 209. Now, what the Switch lacks in resolution, it definitely makes up for in terms of dynamic range, contrast ratio, black levels, things like that are definitely a lot better thanks to that organic LED display that we have on it. Now, one important thing to keep in mind with the One X player is that it is limited in terms of its hardware capacity to render at certain resolutions. So most games are actually recommended to be run in the same resolution that the Switch uses, which is 1280 by 720, and rendering the games at Quad HD resolution is definitely going to be a struggle, especially with this i5 version of the unit that we have over here. It's a little bit more possible with the i7 variants of the One X player, but ideally if you're going to be playing on this mobile display, you're probably going to be rendering things out at 720p if you want to get 60 FPS or better on most modern day gaming titles. Furthermore, based on our experience using Apex Legends, we definitely found a lot more details in both character and environmental assets on the PC version of the game, so naturally the One X player is definitely better defined and certainly smoother in terms of frame rate as well at 720p. And if you do decide to bump up that resolution, the difference between the OLED Switch and the One X becomes even greater, and we're still getting 50 to 45 FPS at sub 1080p resolutions on the One X, which is fairly remarkable given this i5 configuration. And let's actually talk about the internal specs on both of these two handhelds. Now, with the One X, it either utilizes a Tiger Lake based i5 G7 chip that we have specifically in this model, or you can get the two i7 variants, including the 1165 or 1185 7G, which is going to give you better FPS scores and faster overall CPU performance. Now, in all the versions, they're going to be utilizing Intel Iris Xe integrated graphics. On the i5 version, we have 80 execution units. The CPU can turbo up to 4.2 gigahertz, and the GPU can go up to 1.3 gigahertz. In terms of peak maximum computing power at FP32 bits, you're looking at 1.4 teraflops of power versus on the Tegra X1 Plus chip that we have on the OLED Switch, you're looking at around 385 gigaflops in handheld mode and 500 gigaflops in TV dock mode. Now, in terms of RAM and memory capacity, we have 4 gigs on the OLED in terms of RAM and 16 gigabytes on the One X. In terms of long-term storage, 64 gigabytes on the OLED model, which is a nice upgrade from the 32 gigs that you get traditionally with the Switch and Switch Lite. And you can obviously expand that memory using the micro SD expansion slot up to 2 terabytes. On the One X with the i5 version, you get a 512 gigabyte SSD drive, which is potentially upgradable to 2 terabytes internally. And you also have an SD card slot, just like the Switch. Furthermore, in terms of the wireless connectivity, on the One X, you have a faster 802.11ax Wi-Fi antenna with Bluetooth 5. On the Switch, you're looking at AC Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.1, as well as NFC connectivity. Furthermore, if you're wondering about battery life, we know that the One X, being a full-fledged PC, is definitely going to require a lot more power, thus has a massive battery inside, 15,300 milliamp hours. Now, the Switch has a much smaller battery, 4,310 milliamp hours, but that's because it's utilizing mobile architecture inside with the Tegra X1 Plus chip being 16 nanometers and a much more power-efficient OLED display, giving you game time up to 4.5 hours on most of modern-day gaming titles on the Switch, versus on the One X, my experience was anywhere between 2 to 3 hours at best on most of my PC games that I play on a personal basis. In terms of non-gaming specific base applications, general computing use, media playback, the One X is certainly going to be a lot more power efficient, up to 10 hours of battery life potentially. And for general media playback on the Switch, Nintendo claims that you can also get up to 9 hours of video playback. Now, in terms of the game library and overall content available on both platforms with the Switch, there's definitely a lot of excellent content available, with up to 4,000 gaming titles for the Switch alone. And obviously, being Nintendo, you have a ton of great exclusives only available on their platform, so that's definitely a huge advantage, especially if you're a big Nintendo fan and love all the different franchises they own, including the new Metroid Dread. That being said, however, the One X is basically a PC, and the games that are available on the PC are almost near infinite. Last I checked, it was around like 1.1 million games available on the Windows platform, so definitely in terms of a variety of gaming titles, there's certainly no shortage of that, not to mention the fact that you could run different emulators and play your old favorite retro games. Furthermore, being just a regular PC, you're not just limited to the gamepad options that are attached to the One X. You can easily use any gamepad controller that's compatible with Windows, so anything from PlayStation, Xbox, third-party attachments, including steering wheels, joysticks, specific flight controls if you're a sim fan, and you're not tied down by the built-in display as well. You can easily expand it to a external monitor, TV, projector, really anything that will utilize HDMI or a Thunderbolt video connection. Now, in summary, I think the One X player undoubtedly is the more capable and powerful handheld gaming system, but the Switch OLED definitely has some things going for it. From a portability standpoint, it's definitely superior. You have the exclusive Nintendo Switch gaming titles, as well as the fact that from a price perspective, it is a huge night and day difference. Basically, the Switch OLED starts around $350 versus the availability of the One X is definitely limited because it was just an initial official Indiegogo campaign. Right now, everything is pretty much all sold out, and even the cheapest i5 version of the console that we have started at around $899. If you wanted the entry-level i7 version, that was $1,000, and the top-range i7 model was pretty much $2,000. So definitely not a cheap handheld system by any stretch of the imagination, and several times more than any Switch OLED that you're going to find out there with all the bells and whistles and accessories. And frankly, at those price points, even with today's inflated PC gaming hardware prices, you can still build a decent gaming system for under $2,000 that will definitely destroy any level of performance that these mobile systems can do if you're just concerned about the overall performance of your gaming experience and not so much concerned about the portability factor of things. Now, what I'm super excited for is the new Steam Deck, which is going to be launching Q2 2022, and the price point is definitely going to be a lot more affordable than what the One X is delivering right now, and hopefully we'll get similar performance. We have a reservation for the Steam Deck, so we're super excited to get our hands on it once it becomes available, hopefully early next year. And if you guys are interested in more details about anything we've talked about in this video, check out the description down below for more details. I would definitely love to know what you guys think is the best handheld gaming system right now. I definitely think in terms of this specific comparison, the One X player is certainly the more powerful, capable, and versatile handheld system compared to the Switch OLED, but the Switch OLED definitely has a lot going for it from a price perspective, from an out-of-the-box experience that only really Nintendo can deliver, and definitely a lot more kid-friendly, as we mentioned earlier in this comparison. But if you haven't done so already, make sure you have subscribed to our channel. Please make sure you have post notifications turned on. If you enjoy our content, want to support us, the best way to do so is either use our Amazon affiliate links or click on our paypal.me, which will give us a little bit of kickback and help support this content. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you real soon in the next one. Take care.